Shalom Israel. Welcome back to another edition of Bible Basics. My name is Shamar Yah, and to my left,
Allah Kabar.
Kabar. And tonight we're going to be going over Thou shalt not wrest judgment. First thing I want to get is a definition of judgment. The process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discerning and comparing. So the first thing is an understanding of judgment, right? It's the actual process. Forming an opinion based off of what? The information that you have. Discerning and comparing. Saying, okay, well, what about this? What about that? Asking those questions, gathering that information, and then forming an opinion based off of what you know. The capacity for judging, right? So let's go over to Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 17. So when we're talking about judgment, we're talking about an opinion or evaluation that's discerned or formulated by discernment and comparing. Go ahead, Deuteronomy 1 and 17.
Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 17. Ye shall not respect persons in judgment, but ye shall hear the small as well as the great.
So the Most High commanded, whenever you are in a position of being a judge, because the thing is, a lot of people, everybody in Israel wants to be a judge. Everybody in Israel wants to be a teacher. There's, so much of a limelight around these positions and titles that everyone seeks after these things without really understanding what it comes with. Everybody just want to be able to have that, and it's like, man, and keep it real, not everybody's even made to judge, because there's requirements that come with judging, both as the judge and as far as bringing forth the actual judgment if there's a punishment, right? It says, so the first thing is you're not supposed to respect persons. What it means to respect persons is to have different opinions or different ways that you deal with people based off of their status, based off of their stature, based off of their looks, whatever the case may be. If you see a man that's making $100,000 a month and you see a man that's making $1,000 a month, and they both come in and stole, let's say, $50 worth of merchandise, they should both get an equal punishment. Right. There shouldn't be this man's making $100,000. He's probably, he cool or whatever the case may be, or he just made a mistake, but look what he got going for him. It's none of that. It says the great and the small. Go ahead.
You shall not be afraid of the face of man.
And you can't be afraid. If it be a big old 6'10", 400-pound man, and he come in there and he's like, man, look, you really gonna tell me that? Absolutely. Yeah. You right.
That's right.
If you wrong, you wrong. It don't matter how big you are. It don't matter how bold you are. It don't matter what kind of power you hold in your hand. That's right. And you have to stand on that truth and stand in that judgment regardless of who's staring back. That's a big part of judgment. So when people talk about how they want to be in these positions, they want to be judges, everybody wants to, man, you got to be a certain caliber of man to do that, real talk. You got to have a certain gumption about yourself to be like, man, this is what it is. Now, you can receive that, you can reject it, but the word of truth shall stand.
That's right.
Go ahead.
You shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is God's.
And he said, ultimately, don't even be afraid, because all you're doing, a lot of what judgment is oftentimes is warning. That's a big part of judgment, right? There's a couple of different parts. You got the warning itself, the judgment itself, which is the action of punishment. For example, in the scriptures, if people were caught in adultery, man or a woman, they were supposed to be put to death, right? That's another form of judgment, right? That's the actual judgment itself going forth. And then there's also obviously the aspect of mercy. So we're going to touch on these different things as we go through the lesson. Go ahead.
And the cause that is too hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it.
Go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. Stay in Deuteronomy. We're going to go over to chapter 16. And we're going to get verse 19.
Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 19. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons.
So when he says you should not wrest judgment, that means you're not supposed to just allow things to stand. letting judgment rest. Because you have two things when you talk about resting, right? You either talk about, man, we just ran 4 miles, now we resting, right? Which means that we're no longer doing anything. But also rest, W-R-E-S-T, like wrestle. It shouldn't be a difficult decision when the Most High's laws and commandments are in place. That's why we have the laws and commandments, and that's why they're written, and everybody has a copy.
That's right.
It's really no excuse for ignorance. And even when we didn't have printed out Bibles, you had the Levites that would minister unto all of Israel. You still had that education that was going forth amongst our people, to where everyone at some point or another should be learning and have learned the law, to where these are established things that all of us are going to be judged off of. It's not going to be about preference. It's not going to be about how the judge is feeling that day. It's according to what thus saith the Lord. From the top.
Thou shalt not wrest judgment.
So you shouldn't be wrestling and struggling with the judgment that the Most High ultimately set forth, because that's what we just read in Deuteronomy 1, right? He said the judgment is the Lord's. The judgment is coming from the Most High. That's not something that we're supposed to wrestle with. And all the things that get written of in the scriptures with all the different commands that death was the penalty, it shouldn't be a whole lot of wrestling. And it is obviously an intense situation. Imagine being in Israel at a time where there was really a stoning that was going forth. This woman has been found committing adultery. The man is going to be tried later, whatever the case may be. Right. But everyone, it literally says, bring them out and stone them so that everyone can fear. You're not supposed to wrestle with that. There shouldn't be a big pause and a big hesitation. When someone knows that right or they know that wrong, they know the judgment. Yeah. So how much more can you do for someone if they're not going to do for themselves? We all have this law. We all have access to it. We all have decisions to make. So when that person crosses that line and they fall into the hands of the Lord, don't rest that judgment. Go ahead.
Thou shalt not respect persons.
And he says it again, don't have respecter of persons, because that becomes a really big issue. Israel is full of silver tongues. Right. People are charismatic. People are lovable. People are, really convincing, whatever the case may be. Said, look, you can't respect any person, whether they're your best friend, your brother, your mama. If they fall into wickedness, then you have to do what thus saith the Lord. Go ahead.
Neither take a gift.
Why? Go ahead.
For a gift does blind the eyes of the wise.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so
no.
For a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise.
So he said, and you're not supposed to take gifts. Because you see that a lot in Esau's kingdom, right? They going before a judge like, man, don't even worry about it. I'm having lunch with the DA tomorrow morning. Right. I'm having lunch with the judge. They take them to some super fancy restaurant, $1,200 dinner, $1,200 lunch. Anyway, man, I got my client. Look, I'm being real with you. I think he is guilty, but I'm just looking for a plea deal. What can you do for me? And when you in that situation, you done had some drinks at their hand. You done had a good plate of food. Yeah, you got a gift. So now it becomes kind of harder to execute judgment against somebody that's giving you all that, right? That's why he said to avoid all that, don't even take the gift. Don't take all that kind of stuff, because then it becomes harder. It's like, oh man, but this person seems like such a good friend. Well, that's because they give you things. Don't accept that gift. Go ahead.
For a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous.
And it perverts the words of the righteous. Let's go over to the book of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 11, and we're going to read from 7 down to 10. It says, and it perverts the words of the righteous. Go ahead.
Ecclesiasticus chapter 11 and verse 7. Blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first, and then rebuke.
He said, blame not before thou hast examined the truth. How often, how often can we really say, first and foremost, even when it's not a super serious situation, we hear things, we see things, and we formulate opinions in our mind that actually make sense just to be totally wrong. You ever had that happen to you? I laugh at it now because it's like, man, I've been blown away at so many things that I've formed opinions on that made so much sense to me, only to later learn information and realize that I was completely off. Like
that makes you slow down.
Oh yeah.
You like, I gotta pump the brakes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It'll make you slow down. It'll make you reconsider. It'll make you look twice. Like, hold on, let me be sure this time. And hopefully you ain't do no damage in them opinions.
Right. That's part.
That's the big thing. Hopefully you didn't get to speaking too much, a little too long,
right,
a little too often, because then all of a sudden when you're wrong, you put your foot in your mouth. You got to go back and, oh man, I mean, it becomes a mess because it was, you were too hasty or, you judged before you really understood. That's why that's why, remember, the definition of judgment had to do with, let's go back, the process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discerning and comparing. You're evaluating the situation. You have to get the information. You have to get the facts. Then you can form your opinion. And then it says, understand first and then rebuke. Then you can say, okay, hold on. So let me just make sure I got this right.
You want to make sure you get the right understanding from the right person.
Exactly.
Because that person may not be saying it correct. So you want to go back to the original people, the original source. So yeah, that's deep, man. Them definitions is really important. Bring it out.
You see the same thing in Esau's system, because they bring in witnesses. They bring in, all right, your first witness, your second witness, your third witness. Do you have any evidence to submit? Do you have, statements? Do you have videos? They have to have all those things come in to be able to compare, and then they make an accurate assessment as to what truly happened. Some things make sense. Like I said, some stuff, it sounds so good and it makes so much sense, and then all of a sudden you get thrown for a loop. That's why you got to evaluate, understand first. Go ahead.
Verse 8. So Ecclesiasticus 11 and verse 8. Answer not before thou hast heard the cause.
Don't answer before you heard the cause. Why would you do that? I don't even understand why somebody would do that. Because then that,
I know some people like that.
Absolutely. If tell the truth, I've been a person like that. That's the thing. Like, we advocate against things that we've grown from a lot of times.
Right.
That's the scriptures say, let a man become a fool that he may be wise.
That's right.
Sometimes that's the process. Sometimes, that's your testimony. It says, answer not before thou hast heard the cause. What would even make them do that? I don't even get why because boy, it'd be easy to form them opinions. It's easier to tear down than it is to build up. It's easier to critique than it is to create. It's real easy to be able to cast a judgment and from afar point a finger. They say that old saying, you throwing stones with a glass house. I always thought that was throwing stones at my glass house. Like you trying to tear me down. From my understanding, the saying goes, throwing stones with a glass house, which means you throwing stuff at other people that if they return the favor, it'll tear your world apart. You're in a glass house. It'll destroy your world if they was throwing the things at you that you're throwing at them. So he says, answer not before thou hast heard the cause. Go ahead.
Neither interrupt men in the midst of their talk.
So there's both ways to look at that, right? Don't be trying to cut people off and hurry up and put words into their mouth to fulfill the purpose that you want. So what you're saying is you tried to, people get all, what do you call that? Get all, turned up, hostile, whatever, because they already feel like they know what's going on. They want to hurry up and they just waiting for you to slip up. And then it goes on the flip side. Sometimes you let people talk enough, they'll hang themselves. All you got to do is sit there and listen.
That's right. That's right. And everybody else to see what's really going on. Exactly. Like, as they started to look bad on you, but you just, had patience and sat back, and you know what? They'll tell on themselves.
Exactly. That's why he said, don't interrupt. Just let it play out. Right. Let them say everything they got to say, because ultimately, truth can be silent. Still gonna be truth.
Yeah.
Let them finish. Let them put all those things out there, whatever the case may be. Then you can judge, right? And so can everyone else. Read on.
Okay. Verse 9. Strive not in a matter that concerneth thee not, and sit not.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Okay. Strive not in a matter that concerneth thee not. The scriptures say, whether it be good or bad, speak not of other men's lives. That's really important, because a lot of times you get a whole lot of he said, she said in Israel. In so much that there's actually a commandment. The Most High literally had to command us to not be, a talebearer. to not be spreading rumors, to not just be in everybody's business. And everywhere you go, everybody hearing about somebody else's household. Scriptures say, do not be a talebearer. Don't go up and forth amongst the people speaking lies. And then it gives you wisdom saying, even if it's good, don't talk of other men's lives. Man, did I tell you, bro? My boy just got a Rolex and he got this going and that going. And there's so many different things that can even come out of that, right? You sit there big up in somebody and now you talking to somebody that's plotting on them. You have there's so many different things that can come out of it. You want to say something?
No. I'm just saying, man, this is very, very important, Israel. I hope y'all listening. Please take this in. Don't take this lightly. This subject is very, very important because all that talebearing, it destroys. Like you said, even if it's something good, that's a good point. Hey, they might have been, now they're going to go jack the dude, So, and it could be anything. Like, man, leave everybody, if you want to, let that stay within y'all conversation. Unless y'all agree to take that out and, tell everybody else, then that's a different situation. But, yeah, just very serious. Take it serious. Man.
It says, so ultimately, if it ain't got nothing to do with you, you don't really have a stake to claim, shouldn't really be. And I'm not saying if because I want to bring some balance to that, right? I'm not saying if we know, which, things we've seen in the past, someone is an adulterer or a fornicator, the scriptures tell you to bring that out to the congregation.
That's right.
You're supposed to note that man so they can have no company with them. Okay. But if it's some type of personal matter, me and this Jay get into an argument, we had too much to drink, something goes on, that might be something that me and you could talk about. It'd be like, man, I apologize for what I was doing. Right. It don't even need to concern everybody, because then everybody else, you might get the wrong person. They having a bad day. They calling for blood. Yeah. Now all of a sudden you like, man, whereas this is a small matter between me and him of just real life happening between us, stuff happens or whatever the case may be, maybe, or a slip up. Then all of a sudden now it's like all of Israel wants your head on a pike because somebody done told somebody who told somebody. Yeah. He said, man, if it don't even, if it's not about you, you don't really have no reason to strive in that.
That's a good point.
Go ahead.
Verse 9 still. Strive not in a matter that concerneth thee not, and sit not in judgment with sinners.
Because ultimately, if they're sinners, they're not holding themselves accountable to this law. How much can you really say that they hold themselves accountable to, first off? What are they really going to judge off of? It's going to be subjective. It's going to be opinion. It might change every single time. He said, man, you don't need to sit with sinners in judgment. Go ahead.
Verse 10, my son, meddle not with manners, with many matters.
She said, meddle not with many matters. Not everything you have to be involved in. Just like I said, if there's a small disagreement between two Jakes, they figuring it out, they don't really need everybody to rush over and, want to see what's going on, pull out a cell phone. Like, man, what could have been a small matter now has, what did he call that? Turn an anthill into a mountain, or a molehill into a mountain. It becomes a lot bigger than what it needs to be. So he said, don't even meddle with many matters, right? You don't need to be involved in everything that's going on around you. He says, go ahead.
My son, meddle not with many matters, for if thou meddle much, thou shalt not be innocent.
He said, if the more that you get involved in, the more you risk getting caught up. Because then they like, man, Al-Kabar was there. Man, bring him in as a witness. And you like, man, I low-key what, like, there's so many different things. Like, you could be like, man, I wasn't really paying attention as much, but now your word is being taken as law. You can make a mistake. You can speak on something that didn't have nothing to do with you. You can give the wrong judgment. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why if you don't need to be involved in a situation, or if somebody's not coming to you saying, hey, I want your opinion. I want your perspective. I want your wisdom and your input on this. If it's not a situation like that, like, hey, you know what, it may not even involve me. Yeah. Now, if I see two Jakes about to come to blows, all right, hold on, let me go meddle in this one. Let me separate y'all. Let's y'all come together and talk about it later. But if they're already in the talking stage, I don't need to be over there trying to ear hustle and, oh, dang, he said what? Oh, hey, did you know that they was over there? Like, man, meddle not with many matters. Go ahead.
Okay. So verse 10, my son, meddle not with many matters, for if thou meddle much, thou shalt not be innocent. And if thou follow after, thou shalt not obtain.
And was that all of that verse?
No.
Go ahead.
Neither shalt thou escape by fleeing.
let's go over to, stay in Sirach. Let's go over to chapter 19. And let's get verse 4. This is a part of judgment, right? Go ahead.
Sirach 19:4. He that is hasty to give credit is light-minded.
He that is hasty to give credit, that's a part of your judgment, right? A lot of the problems stem from relationships and specifically households. I mean, you can't be quick to give credit. How many marriages were rushed? Little to no foundation, little to no, real kind of understanding. None of that's really present. It's just like, everybody has the same needs. Everybody has the same concerns. Everybody's kind of looking for something very similar. So you find somebody and it's like, all right, this will do. You give them credit quickly. Then next thing you know, you start 2 years down the line, you having all kinds of hell and problems and all kinds of difficulty trying to merge two polar opposites together. Man, you can't be quick to give that credit. That's light-minded. That means you don't really know much. You ain't really been around people to see the evil, to see the betrayal, to see the deceit, and to see the good. How are you really, you going to give credit too quickly? Oh, man, that brother look good. Man, that brother look good up there. That brother look strong. Man, look at the way that they bringing out the word. The whole time that Jake might be a fornicator, might be a wicked man, might have more skeletons in his closet than Halloween stores.
For real.
It'd be all kind of stuff. It's like, man, you can't be too quick to give credit. Go ahead.
So he that is hasty to give credit is light-minded, and he that sinneth shall offend against his own soul.
Let's stay in Sirach, go over to chapter 6 and verse 7. And it says, and when you sin, you offended against your own soul. The situations we get into, it's like ultimately who really lost? You.
For real. The book of Sirach, Ecclesiasticus, chapter 6 and verse 7. If thou wouldest get a friend, prove him first, and be not hasty to credit him.
It's the same thing, and that's kind of this is another part that kind of inspired that the lesson spiritual credit, right? Even with credit bureaus, and that's the thing, Esau knows the scriptures, and they employ these ideals all the time in their business, which is why they've been so successful. Esau tell you the Bible's not important. That's, man, you don't want that Bible. You read the Bible, you don't need that. Whole time, that's what they founded all of their successful kingdoms off of. Yeah, they start getting into wickedness because it's Esau, but when it's talk about not quick to credit somebody or to give them credit, look at how Esau operates within his actual credit system. If you have fresh credit, that's the equivalent. They say, having no credit is like having good credit. It's almost like you don't have anything at all, right? You're a fresh slate. They don't start you off with a $10,000 credit card. That's not how it works. They give you a little bit. Let's see what he do. Give you 300, 500, maybe 1,000. Depends on depends on your income, which you can also they verify. Then once you prove yourself in this little bit, then they might give you a little bit more. They see you paying off $300 consistently. Maybe they double it. Maybe they triple it. Maybe they give you another card, or they start sending you your pre-approved letters. Go ahead. You know what? We're willing to do more business with you. Why don't you see what else you qualify for? That's what Esau does, right? It says, they trying to get a piece. It says, but if you get a friend, prove them first. You got to give that person time. See what they're made of. Do they share your idea? First off, actually, before any of that, make sure they're righteous. Make sure they're really righteous. Not that they put on a good game, not that they shalom every Saturday, but that this is a really righteous man. Like the scriptures say, that thou knowest to keep the commandments.
That's right. That's Ecclesiastes, 37 and 12.
It says, and be not hasty to credit him. Because again, when you get, and that also goes back to the marriages. That's your friend. Tobias in the book of Tobit, when he got married to his wife, he got up and prayed and said, have mercy on me and my sister. That's your sister in Christ or your brother in Christ. That's someone that can really help your walk or really hinder your walk. That's somebody that can make you feel like $1 million, or you have everything going right and you feel like you down in the dumps. Can't be quick to give yourself over to such a big commitment with so little time to actually prove that person. And you see it all the time. I'm pretty sure we ain't even got to get personal, where you see people who have relationships that like tear them apart. People commit suicide. They losing jobs and losing opportunities. You know, you see people with so much potential. They go into good college. They go, you know, they got good jobs. They just seem to be doing it all. Then they get into a relationship that start tearing them apart and taking them down. And people looking at them now like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You used to look so good.
Man, you let yourself go. Your physical, your finances, your what, your this, your that. Like, man, you let yourself go. That you being weighed down, you're vexed. Yeah. And I'm, you know, that's why the scriptures say, don't be quick. Yeah. Don't be quick to give that person credit. Don't be hasty.
That's a heavy warning.
That's exactly, and that's an aspect of judgment, because that's discernment, right? Being able to see through the smiles, being able to see through certain mannerisms, being able to really look at somebody and see who they are, not who they're pretending or portraying themselves to be. Right. That takes a level of discernment, and that's a part of judgment. Let's go over to James chapter 2. James chapter 2, we're going to start at verse 1, and we're going to read down to 9.
The book of James, chapter 2, and verse 1. My brethren, have not the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord are of glory, with respect of persons. Let me read that.
I kind of read that from the top, please.
My brethren, have not the faith of the Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with respect of persons.
He said, look, don't be in this truth. Don't be trying to be about this faith and you have respect of persons. Because you're not going to be able to last, right? Because it's easy to be enticed when you respect somebody too much. You idolizing somebody, or you feel like you guys have such a relationship that you don't ever want to offend them or disrespect them to the point where you put yourself in so much of a box you can't even correct them. Right. That's a dangerous place to be in, because then you rolling with sinners. That's you sitting in judgment with sinners. Scriptures tell us not to do that. And then it says, have not the faith with respect to persons. Not only can you be wooed to do something out of character, but then also when they offend, you might not want to overstep. You might not want to, you might not be judging properly because this person is my so-and-so, my best friend, my buddy, they like a so-and-so to me. Like, hey, look, if they wicked, they wicked. We had to learn that with our families first, right? Not to say that we should always just automatically cut them off. There's that balance, because you still ultimately are trying to save their souls. Right. But even coming into the truth, we kind of get a taste of all the fundamentals. Kind of get a little bit of an understanding as to the road ahead. Go ahead.
Verse 2. For if there come unto your assembly a man with gold ring and goodly apparel, and there come in also a poor man in vile raiment, and ye have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing.
He said, but you respect the man that's wearing the gay clothing, meaning like he got something real kind of flashy on, real like that, the mink coats and all that kind of stuff. You got something expensive. He said that gay clothing, right? Go ahead. And it says with the gold ring, so you know you got that money. Go ahead.
And say unto him, sit thou here in a good place.
And you saying, sit here in a good place. You see them walk in with that nice coat on. You see the different clothing. Yeah. You see the gold ring. You are like, oh yeah, he got a bag. Hey man, won't you? Hey, come up here with me. Won't you sit right here with me? Go ahead.
Okay. And say to the poor, stand thou here.
He says, stand. He like, look, hey, come over here with. Hey man, can you stand over there for me?
Right.
Take the poor man and get him up out of his seat, but then you want the rich man to come over. You got respect unto him because you looking at that, and that's the problem. A lot of Israel, we do that, right? Mm-hmm. Even that's why you have such an issue with the world. Everybody looking for all these rappers and athletes and celebrities to be black leaders. They are entertainers. That's the circus. That's the gladiator games. That's a part of the system ultimately. People be looking for these people with money to be saviors because they look nice. And that's all Israel's going off of. Right. They got a gold chain, got on a gold ring, got on the gay clothing. Right. They looking good, so you just automatically assume that their character is going to match the kind of flauntiness that they're showing outwardly. That's not
the case.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Okay. And say to the poor, stand out here. Okay, stand out there, or sit here under my footstool.
Under my footstool. Like, man, you can be under where I put my feet at.
Wow.
Regarding them like they nothing, right? Just because one is poor and one is rich, totally different treatment. That's respecter of persons. That's you sit up here and treat one person way better than you treat the other person because you value one person way better than the other person, associating this person's value so much higher, right? Go ahead.
Are ye not then partial in yourselves, and are become judges of evil thoughts?
You become a judge of an evil thought, feeling like that's cool, feeling like that's okay, having these evil thoughts within your head, and you like are accepting of those things. Go ahead.
Hearken, verse 5. Hearken, my beloved brethren, have not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom that ye have promised to them that love him?
He said, look, hasn't the Most High chosen the poor of this world but rich in faith? Because a lot of times it's crazy. Oftentimes people that really come from money or come from what they, what the world calls success, what the world looks at as like big ups, they're oftentimes, not willing to work or don't have a lot of faith, have these certain issues to overcome. And it's not across the board that's the standard, but that oftentimes can be the case. And on the flip side, you see a lot of times with those who are poor, those who are downtrodden and disadvantaged, they have a whole lot of faith. They think that things are going to happen. They have faith. They have a lot of joy despite their, really unfortunate circumstances. You see those kinds of things often. Just like with the woman when when Christ was watching everybody donating to church, right? Everybody was giving their alms. And she took the 2 pence. You had rich people, they was throwing in all kind of money. If you got $100 million in the bank, $100,000 ain't really nothing. What is that? That's 0.1%. That's no money. That's really not a dent. That's not even, that's a drop in the bucket. But then if you have somebody, she had 2 pence. Imagine you got 2 cents. That ain't gonna buy nothing. You might as well keep that to yourself. That's the mentality that most people come up with, right? This ain't gonna do nothing for nobody. I might as well keep this. At least I can, start saving up or whatever the case may be. But she was like, nah, the little bit that I have, I'm going to give to the Most High. And Christ said she gave more than everybody here because she gave 100%.
All that she had. That was probably her food for that night, too,
Ain't no
back
telling.
in the day, that was a lot.
Exactly. Ain't no telling what she was going to use that for. But she was like, I'd rather give this to the Most High. Christ was like, man, she gave more than anybody. So that's why the scriptures are saying, hath not the Most High chosen the poor of this world rich in faith? Verse 6.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Verse 6. But ye have despised the poor. Do not rich men oppress you and draw you before judgment seats?
He said, man, how is it rich people are the ones that give you the most hell?
That's real.
It don't make, people make jokes about that all the time, how people be going so hard online and in protests defending billionaires. Hey, dude, this is the same person that'll sit up here and pay you $15, tell you your life is only worth $15 an hour, knowing that's not even a livable wage, especially not in California, give you minimal bathroom breaks, and God forbid you step out of line or say something while they actually are present. So, you hear about these different super massive companies firing people for various different reasons because they just got the power to be able to. He said, man, ain't it rich people that oppress you? You think just off of that understanding that people would be so much, that they would treat billionaires or treat rich people differently. Or if you're not going to treat them worse than a normal man because they're oppressing you, at least you should keep it consistent across the board, knowing that they'll oppress you. It said they oppress you and they draw you before the judgment seats. Let you have some type of altercation with a rich man. He ain't going to fight. I'm offended. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm pressing charges. He said, man, aren't they the ones that's treating you like that? Go ahead.
Verse 7. Do not they blaspheme that worthy name by the which ye are called?
Don't they talk about Israel? Aren't they the ones trying to destroy Israel? Don't they blaspheme the name of the Most High? That's the name that we're called by? Go ahead.
If ye fulfill the royal law according to the scriptures, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well.
He said, you're doing well. Go ahead.
But if you have respect to persons, you commit sin.
You what?
Ye commit sin.
You what?
Ye commit sin.
He said that is a sin. Everybody looking for the thou shalt and the thou shalt not. He said it twice, at least that we read.
Yep.
It's all throughout the scriptures, not to wrest judgment, not to be a respecter of persons. He said, and if you are in sin. If you allowing somebody that you know is wicked or has crossed the line with the Most High, they ain't showing no fruits of repentance, or the Most High already gave the judgment saying, look, if there's certain things you can't come back from, right? Like certain penalties, the Most High was like, all right, even if he continues to deal with you like he did with David, because everybody loves to use that story, look what David went through, right? Look at all the things that he had to endure. And then ultimately, keep it real, we don't have no prophets that came and anointed us with oil. So I wouldn't be expecting to ride on the same coattail and have the same favor before the Most High as David. We not, man, that shouldn't even need to be explained, but I know it does. We are not, I'm not about to roll the dice on me being on that level.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, the Most High said he's going to have respect unto whom he's going to have respect to.
He's going to have
mercy, you know. So that's another thing, man. We can't just jump at somebody else's situation and think that the Most High is going to have the same mercy on us, because it's not the cause, you know.
Because if you really want to be technical, because I know somebody might say, well, how is that fair? How can he could look at David a certain way, but then I ain't going to get that same. Well, look what David was doing. First off, and I ain't going to go too heavy into this because this lesson is not about King David, but it is it's an honorable mention. First off, David, the humility he had growing up, he was a shepherd, right? Man. All of his other brothers, they wasn't out there in the field when Samuel. When Samuel the prophet came, David's father didn't even regard him as one of his sons. He had 7 sons that he brought out. And remember, even Samuel was like, damn, is that him, Most High? Is that him, Lord? Look at him, man. Most High was like, nah, man, I'm not looking at him like men looking at him. I'm looking at his heart. I ain't choosing him to be king. He went through all of his sons, and then Samuel was like, you don't have nobody else? The Most High ain't said it was none of them. He's like, well, I mean, there's David. He wouldn't even consider him a part of the lineup or on the roster. You know, it always be them people that slept on, that's underestimated, that's the underdog. They're the ones. They poor in this world, but they rich in faith. Been undermined your whole life, been underdog your whole life. You figure out how to rise above, how to challenge things, how to be you. He said,
that's real.
Then when he brought a man, he was like, that's him, that's the one. King David was like, man, I'm not just going to be a king that orders you. I'm going to go before you in war. I'm not just going to send men to their deaths. I'm going to go fight with you, frontlining. Really, in the field for real. Even from his youth, he didn't even know how to use a sword and shield. It was like, I can't believe y'all gonna stand by while this uncircumcised Philistine is talking about the Most High that way. That's what the Most High said. I'm looking at the heart. That other, his biggest brother or his oldest brother, he might have been a big old strong, but he probably wouldn't have been one of the men that was like, man, what we gonna do about Goliath?
Yeah.
David was little. He the pretty boy. They say he was comely. He was like, man, I'm going to do something. Most High, let me swing this sling like I ain't never swung it before. That was the type of heart he had. That's why the Most High was like, oh, yeah, him. Because I see his heart. I see his intentions. I see his will. I see his faith towards me being the Most High. He was like, I'm seeing all that. Most High is looking at him like that and was like, oh, yeah, that's the one.
And our faith is what wins. Our faith in the Most High is what wins our battles. So we're going to have to get that faith back. We're going to have to start remembering all these righteous acts and getting all that faith back, because we're going to need that to win. The Most High is the one that fights our battles. Shooting what? David, he couldn't even put the armor on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Armor was hanging off. He didn't have no guns. He didn't have none of that. He was just like, I'm going to go take this dude out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Forget what y'all talking about.
And it said he was singing psalms. He trusted in the Most High as he was doing it. He just had that faith. So that's why the Most High was like, man, look how you trusting in me. All right, I'm going to rock with you. You ain't on that? Man, don't roll the dice saying, let me be like David.
Yeah.
Let's go over to Acts chapter. Did you finish that?
No,
go ahead.
But if you have respect to persons, ye commit sin.
You're wrong. Go ahead.
And are convinced of the law as transgressors.
Go to Acts chapter 10, and let's get verse 34. The Most High has commanded us to do these things. He's the same way. Scripture say a number of different times, the Most High do not care about that status. He don't care about the title. He don't care. Man, Acts 10 and 34,
Okay. The book of Acts, chapter 10 and verse 34. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth I receive that God is no respecter of persons.
The Most High is not a respecter of persons. Go ahead.
But in every nation he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him.
He's looking for who's going to be real about, who's going to be zealous after his law. 2 Chronicles 19, verse 7. That's how the Most High determines who he's going to deal with and how much to what level. He like, look, man, let's see how they do. Because a lot of times you can see that's a real exemplification of pride. You can see somebody's pride based on how well they keep the commandments. Because every time you lose patience and you feel like your problem is bigger than the Most High or your problem is above his law, you ain't being humble. You see a whole lot of pride in that, right? Because you're literally putting yourself above the Most High in that instance. That's why the Most High was like, man, I ain't going to rock with it. How could I be out there rocking with you and that's the way that you're moving? But then when you humble yourself to the commandments and you're really saying, you know what, however uncomfortable it is, whatever the process that the Most High is putting me through, he already said he ain't going to put me through more than what we can handle.
That's right.
So I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to trust in him. I'm going to get through this process, and I'm going to humble myself to this law. I'm not going to do things that's out of character or violate the law so to be able to be more comfortable, to have an advantage. I'm humbling myself to this. Then the Most High is like, okay, I can accept that. I can respect that. I have mercy on that because I can see what you're working with. I can see how you're moving. That's different from somebody that's just like, man, I'm tired. I need to. I couldn't. Look what I was up against.
Most High ain't looking at that. So let me read that. So 2 Chronicles chapter 19 and verse 7. Wherefore now let the fear of the Lord be upon you. Take heed and do it. For there is no iniquity with the Lord our God, nor respect of persons.
Well, he said it again. There's no iniquity with him, and he does not respect persons. He don't care about your title. He don't care if you was president of the earth.
Nope.
And you like, man, you know, I was president. I had, you know, all these things, and I know, man, I really understand it now, Lord. It's difficult to try to run a planet. You know, I'm sure you understand my mistakes. He said, nah. I don't care about your title. I care about your money or your status. Most High said, look, my word shall stand true. Let the Most High be true and let every man be a liar.
That's right.
That's what the scriptures say. Was that all of that?
Okay. Yeah, for there is no iniquity with the Lord our God, nor respecter of persons, nor takings of gift.
Nor taking of gifts. And he don't care about your gift. Go over to Matthew chapter 7. And the Most High does not care about your gift. Because at a certain point, right, it's just kind of like a Trojan horse kind of thing. Which, mind you, was a gift. That's why it's like you're not supposed to take gifts. At a certain point, if you're doing wrong, but you're constantly giving, you're really just trying to Trojan horse your way into a situation. You're not really trying to get right, be held accountable, or do differently. You're just hoping to be able to. And that's why the Most High was like, man, I don't care about the gifts. I don't care about none of that. If you're not going to be able to get right, or if you're not going to make the decisions to at least get on that path, then the rest of it is irrelevant. Matthew 7 and 1.
The book of Matthew, chapter 7 and verse 1. Judge not that ye be not judged.
That's it. Close the Bible.
That's what the Christian church do, right? See, that's it. No more. Look at them understand it.
It's a lot that close the Bible right there. You can't judge me.
Right.
Don't judge me. You can't say that. You can't do that. But read verse 2 because this is why he said, don't judge, unless you're that ye be not judged. Go ahead.
For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged.
So whatever it is that you got to say about somebody, we're going to flip the microscope and look at with that same standard that you hold people to. Let's see how well you hold up to it. Because like I said, it's easy to critique. It's hard to create. It's easy to tear down. It's Yeah, it's easy to tear down, but it's hard to build up.
That's right.
So when you got something to say against everybody, you ain't got no kind of understanding, which really stems from a lack of wisdom. You got all this to say, all these opinions. All right, well, let's flip that microscope. See how well it holds up. See how well you do. See, when you get into that situation and you get a little more understanding and you get to get your hands dirty, how well are you going to handle those things? Because then when you talked about somebody that you felt like wasn't sugar, honey, iced tea, and you get into that same situation and do a hell of a lot worse, that's why then you're going to be a hypocrite in the sight of men, what the scriptures tell us not to do. So that's why he said it's better that you just don't judge. Yeah. At least not openly, like I said, unless you're called for or you're set up in a position because you're known for your righteousness to where you need to be a judge.
Right.
If it ain't got nothing to do with you, probably you don't need to have a hand in it.
No. And that's the thing. Like, if you ain't keeping the commandments, you shouldn't even try to judge. You shouldn't even be trying to judge, period. Because and most of y'all, I'm talking about, everybody, I'm talking about, the churchgoers that don't keep the commandments. They say the commandments is done away with. They're all wicked if they judge. Verse 5 brings that out. You want to read that?
We're gonna go to we're gonna go to 2. We're gonna come back.
Okay.
But it says, like you said, and keep it real, it'd be a lot of people in this truth. At least saying that we're in the truth. The crazy part about it is, and I remember we was talking about this the other day. Jake was talking about, the scriptures talk about the straight and narrow path, few there be that find it. We feel like when we come into the truth, when we say we're in the truth, that we've already found that straight and narrow path. And don't get me wrong, it is a difficult place, right? But a lot of times, like the scriptures say, we trim our ways for love. And you over here, you over there, you a little bit there, you a little bit there. It's like you're not really on that straight and narrow. The straight and narrow means you got to be straight and narrow. It ain't really a whole lot of space to be able to lean into the left, lean to the right. You walking over here, you going this way. You stray off the path, you slip off the ledge. It's the straight and narrow. It's not a whole lot of space. That's why it's few that find it.
And that's a real good point, man. I mean, people that even be in this truth, like, they want to learn everything else, but a lot of people, they don't go off the Torah first. They don't learn the first 5 books. They want to know everything else, all the other big things,
right.
They don't want to learn the law. You go to look at most people's Bible, they don't even be highlighted. They don't got nothing underlined, nothing. You know what I'm saying? So they really, and then once you learn it, you got to live it. You got to really live it to really understand this, and then you get to experience some things, and with wisdom, then you break down. You go through the right definitions of the brother like he just brought out, like at the beginning, So yeah, let's take this serious. It's serious work right here, serious business.
From the top of 2.
Yes. Okay. All right. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 2. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again.
So same thing. With however you measuring up, or whatever standard that you hold other people to say that they're not measuring up, you're going to get held to that same standard. See how well you hold up. There's nothing to worry about. If you really you are who you say you are, and you're that guy, and you like, man, you should be on 10 all the time, Ak. And then you see them and they really on 10, you be like, all right, hey, he really about that. But for a lot, or at least a lot of instances, it don't always hold up as well. Slakia. Let's go over to John 7 and 24.
The book of John, chapter 7 and verse 24. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment.
So he said, judge not according to the appearance. Because that's, like I said, because that's what happens when you are a respecter of persons. It said that gold ring, that gay clothing, you sitting up there looking at them and giving them a whole lot of credit. And really when someone, that's like you're associating what they have on or what they're wearing with the value of that person. And then it just becomes, it's completely based off of appearances. It really don't matter. King David was the one that was the underdog. He wasn't really regarded. And then there's been a lot of big and strong that didn't live up to that. Don't judge by the appearance. Man, I see you even see instances where Jakes be out on the street or even on the internet sometimes. You know, people look at profile pictures. Man, there was one sister, Jake was like, man, you damn Edomite devil dog, you this, and that. She's like, bro, I'm 10 tribe. I got green eyes. I can't help that. And I'm like, damn, Jakes be turning up. Judging off the appearance. Or, like I said, you don't have everything. Because if you only looking at the appearance is only surface level. That's not really, you can't look at something by the appearance and really say that you did your due diligence to be able to give a sound judgment. You only went surface deep.
Right.
You only went surface deep. You didn't really do your due diligence because you just looking at them and that's all it takes. He said, judge not by the appearance, but what?
Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment.
Righteous judgment. According to this law, according to facts with the evidence. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and we're going to read verse 22 and 23.
1 Corinthians 12 and 22.
Uh-huh.
Nay, much more those members of the body which seem to be more feeble are necessary.
He said, yay, because that's why he said don't judge by the appearance. You can look at somebody that seems feeble, that seems weak, that seems, however it is that people look down on them, right? It said the ones that appear to be more feeble are actually what?
Nay, much more those members of the body which seem to be more feeble are necessary.
It said that they seem to be more feeble. That's what it seems like. That's what it's looking like from the outside. It said, but in fact, they're actually more necessary. Because that's the same thing that was like with David, right? They probably thought he was feeble. You're like, what? King of all of Israel? Him? David? The shepherd boy? Like, he's feeble. Right. Surely you want one of these 6'7", 300-pound massive. Surely you want one of these, Jace. He said, man, but the ones that seem to be more feeble, they're actually more necessary. They're actually, they have a value that the Most High has placed on them that men cannot see. But if you're judging according to the appearance, then you're only going to be looking at what's on the surface. That's why the Most High said, look, he's looking at hearts. He's looking at hearts. He's looking deeper than that surface because you can't know somebody just by looking at them. Verse 23.
And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable.
Which who thinks?
Which we think.
We think to be less honorable. Somebody might look at somebody and they may not look the best, whether it be clothes or maybe they just, because even the crazy part about it is, even Christ, it said he had a comeliness that no man would desire. He wasn't the best looking dude. So when he's sitting up here saying, I'm the son of the Most High, they're like, man, who does he think he is? Because they thinking that he's more feeble. They thinking, and they're equating, the value as far as what the world values.
Right.
How you going to sit up here and say you this, and that? This nigga ain't even fresh. He ain't even got on no nice clothes, and they probably ain't got no money. Yeah. Who is he?
Got no evil look, you know what I'm saying? Looking all soft.
Yeah, he all those things. It said, but those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, go ahead.
And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, upon these we bestow more abundant honor.
More abundant honor. Go ahead.
And our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness.
Comeliness. So he's saying that's exactly what that's what I'm making reference to when we're talking about Yahweh Shai, right? Let's get Ezekiel chapter 3. So when we're talking about Yahweh Shai, right, he was what you would, at least as far as physical appearance, an uncomely part, right? He wasn't the best looking. That's what the scriptures literally say. He has a comeliness no man would desire. Would nobody want that? He walked, and that was him. That was his life. Nothing, but that wasn't important because even though they said, or even though he may have seemed to be one of those uncomely parts, look at how beautiful his spirit really was, how beautiful his process was, how beautiful the process was, or excuse me, his testimony was. Look at how beautiful it really is, even though he may be deemed one of the more uncomely parts. Ezekiel chapter 3, and let's get verse 17. Okay. We're still talking about judgment.
The book of Ezekiel chapter 3 and verse 17. Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore, hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me.
He said, and give them warning, because ultimately, that's why we got to be bold in the Most High's, in these laws, because he's ultimately saying, give them warning from me. That's the thing. Whenever it's really not even like a personal thing. It's like, man, when someone's warning you, that's why the scriptures say, if you reprove a wise man, he's gonna love you. If you reprove a fool, they're gonna hate you even more. If you are dealing with somebody that's wise and you're correcting them, you giving them warning, they'd be like, it should be a certain level of appreciation on both ends. Both as the person that's warning, a certain level of appreciation, like, look, you don't understand what the Most High can do to you. You bold, you big, you bad, you're cocky, you're arrogant, you're prideful. You going through all these different things right now. I'm giving you warning. Hopefully, you don't got to go. Hopefully, you don't go too far where he destroy you. But it's a certain level of like, man, I'm just trying to get you to understand this. And then it says you're giving warning from the Most High, right? And then if you're wise, like the scriptures say, you'll appreciate that, man. Right. I was making myself up to be a lot more than I thought I was. I appreciate you for that. I love you for that, because ultimately, you're not just telling me because that was your preference. You're trying to save my soul.
That's right.
A wise man is going to be able to understand that. And that's really like the make or break point that you constantly see people in this truth kind of struggle with. I remember one of the speakers that I like to watch often is David Goggins, right? And he talks about how once he accepted how terrible he was, that's when the improvement started. You keep lying to yourself, you're going to push the finish line back further and further and further. It's not me, it's them. That brother just tripping. That brother just don't like me. Right. I'm telling you,
it's always somebody else, right?
It's always somebody else, right? it is always somebody else, right? It's always the other person. And then ultimately, there's no real accountability. There's no real saying, you know what? I did that. The crazy part about it is you get a lot of peace being able to say, I did that. I messed up. Yeah, that was my mistake. That was my L. Yeah, that smut on my name. And then you start the process of saying, how do I clean it up? How do you get better? And the scriptures give you judgment as far as that. It says if your brother turns to you and say, I repent, you're supposed to forgive him. What did it say? 7 times in a day. It might, different things coming out at different times. They got to learn. You got to be long-suffering and bear with them. They might be going through something because they say people don't treat you the way they feel about you. They treat you the way they feel about themselves.
That's right.
Somebody coming around toxic and critiquing. It's like, man, what's going on? They may not even realize that they was so much of a problem.
Yeah.
Real talk.
It's toxic.
Might not even realize, like, man, but once you finally get to that point of saying, man, I've been really toxic, man, I appreciate you, Ak, for giving me that warning. I appreciate you for helping me see the error of my ways before the Most High had to help me see the error of my ways. Because he don't speak like we speak. He's speaking thunder and lightning. He's speaking rebuke and what do you call that? In judgment. He speaks in judgment. Destruction, all those things. But that's an aspect of judgment, that destruction. That's how the Most High speaks. That's why he said, all right, look, give them warning from me. Go ahead.
Y'all should all just be happy that y'all getting the warning. Like that's a righteous spirit when you get corrected and you can take that and say thank you and change your ways. That's a righteous attribute. You see how the unrighteous attributes are. Most High, again, like we read in the scriptures, don't sit with them. Don't even deal with the sinners. Exactly. So yeah. Verse 18. Verse 18. When I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him not warning,
and you don't tell him, go ahead.
Nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way,
Uh-huh.
to save his life,
Because you ultimately trying to save him, go ahead.
that the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity,
Uh-huh.
but his blood will I require at thine hand.
Then it becomes your responsibility. If you have the opportunity to save your brother, to turn them away from wickedness, and you like, man, that's him, that's her. He said, man, nah, they gonna die. They gonna die for that, because the wages of sin is death. But he said that blood is gonna be as if you killed them, because you didn't even give them warning.
See?
That's the Most High says it over and over. Give them warning. Tell them. Because then that's what a lot of people say when they first mess up, right? Yeah. The top two excuses. I didn't know. Nobody told me. Yeah. That's why the Most High was like, look, you see them doing something, tell them.
Yeah.
Because then when they come before the Most High and before that judgment seat, they can't say I didn't know.
They can't say I didn't know, because guess what? You told them.
Exactly.
And this is why it's important. Don't sit with them no more. Just separate yourself. Because all you're going to do over and over is going to have to, you're going to keep having to tell them, and they're going to want to keep wanting to kill you or do something bad to you because they don't want to be corrected.
The scriptures say in Titus, after the first or second and third admonition, reject. Right. Which means if I'm out on the street, right, I don't have on my fringes, and you like, hey, you need to make sure that you're wearing your fringes. Man, you know what? It's crazy. I was just in a rush, has this going on, that going on. I was wearing something different earlier, took it off, whatever the case may be, right? Then you see me a second time. Oh, man, it's crazy. I appreciate you for telling me, bro, because I slipped up and walked. Then you see me a third time. It's like, all right.
You like this dude.
How many times? Because at a certain point, it becomes willful.
That's right.
I'm not saying that you can't forget, but things that are important, you should make it a priority to not forget. Because the same way that we don't forget our wallets leaving out the house often, you don't leave your phone leaving out the house often, because that's a priority to you. The laws and the commandments, that should be your number one priority.
That's right.
You walk out the house, forget your phone, forget your wallet. You got on your fringes, you good. Yeah,
that's right.
I called you 7 times. Why you didn't answer? Man, I left my phone at the house. All good by me. With Shalom.
Right.
Well, welcome to the party.
I'm good to that all day.
Right. Welcome to the party. Come on in. We having a blast. But if you show up without some fringes, you got that phone in that wallet, hey, you need to go home and go change.
Yes.
You need to go get right, then be amongst the body.
That's right. Get right first.
Real talk. You can mess up everybody because you ain't moving right.
Con.
Verse 19.
Okay.
Was that all
verse?
18?
Yeah. It was.
Con.
Verse 19. Yet, if thou warn the wicked.
So if you tell them that, you show them the scriptures, or you tell them and you give them that warning, go ahead.
And he turn not from his wickedness.
But they going to do what they going to do, right? Go ahead.
Nor from his wicked way. He shall die in his iniquity. But thou has delivered thy soul.
Well, then at that point, you're good. You're in the clear. It ain't nothing because you ain't got to, especially, coming into the truth and seeing the scriptures that talk about judgment as far as death, we kind of try to find the balance of at what point should we be putting people to death. This is more so what applies here, right? We're not in our land. We're not governing ourselves. We're subject to Esau. So it's not quite that time to execute judgment to the point of death. Not quite, right? But the scriptures say, give them warning. Tell them that they're wrong. Show them the error of their ways. Let them make a decision. Because you might tell somebody, look, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. They go out and do whatever it is that they want to do anyway. And the Most High like, oh, I saw him warn you. Because I love you, I'm about to chasten her. I'm about to get off of you. Because that's the same way that parents do that, right? They be like, man, I'm about to get in your butt.
Man.
You about to tear you. Because I know that you know better. That'd be the worst butt whoopings. You was a kid.
Yeah.
You do something you didn't really know about. They get you a couple good times. You cry the right way. They like, all right, come on. But if you knew better.
I'm about to get that ass.
Man.
Like, you know man.
When you knew better as a kid, them be the butt whoopings that's when they get to talking. didn't tell you?
Go get me that switch from the tree.
Right. That's when they going in over and over because it's like you knew better. That's what's you knew better. It says you delivered your soul as long as you gave them warning. Read verse 20. We're gonna go down to 20.
All right. Verse 20. Again, when a righteous man doth turn from his righteousness and commit iniquity, I lay a stumbling block before him. And he shall die.
It says, if he turned from his righteousness, he's going to die. Go ahead.
Because thou hast not given him warning. He shall die in his sin, and his righteousness which he hath done shall not be remembered. But his blood will I require at thine hand.
Ooh, we got to take that section by section, right?
Yeah, for real.
He says, a righteous man, he turns from his righteousness. Like the scriptures talk about, the cares of the world come up and start to choke them. They start becoming much less fervent than they used to be. Start to become caught up in the wrong things. You can see that somebody's kind of straying away from that solid foundation that it seemed that they started off with. Right. It says, and I lay a stumbling block before him. So something that's going to cause them to slip up presents itself, right? The opportunity presents itself. It says, he's going to die, and because thou hast not given him warning. So you see the stumbling block, right? You see that person's about to fall into a trap, and you still don't be like, hey, I don't think that's a good idea, bro. Yeah. Hey, man, we about to go to this party. It's about to be females, and we'll do it like, hey, I'm not saying that that's horrible, but, you know, you kind of new, and this is kind of new to you, and you kind of still in your adjustment period. I don't really think that that's wise. You 2 months into the truth, you trying to go to the club. That sounds like a stumbling block. I used to go to the club a lot in the world every weekend.
Right.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't go back, bro, because you ain't going to the club for nothing.
Nope.
You going and you gonna be in that same mindset that you used to be in when you was in the world. Hey, I don't think that's really a good idea for you, man. You about to turn from your righteousness.
See? And that's the hardest thing sometimes to do, because you know that's your partner. And you know he finna have fun, and you don't want to stop him.
But you
don't want to stop him having fun.
That's the
but
love.
But you got to.
That's love, because ultimately, if you see somebody walking to the street and they want to get to the other side because it's like, man, I'm about to go turn up with the homies. Oh, there they go right there. But you see a car flying towards them. I'm not about to let you walk into the street knowing that that's going to be the death of you, regardless of how fun you think the other side was going to be. Like, man, so what?
Right. Oh, look, he's going home drunk, because you know he's drunk. And he grabbing his keys for to get ready to go drive drunk. You can't let him go. You got to warn him. You got to warn your brother. Even though he's like, Nick, I'm the best driver when I'm drunk. I drive.
Boy, that confidence, that liquid courage.
Yeah, that liquor.
It says, you know, they start turning from their righteousness. Mm-hmm. It says, because you didn't give him warning, he's going to die in his sin, and his righteousness is not going to be remembered. So all the good, so you might have done 6 years, 10 years, 20 years of doing good, and go out and turn into wickedness. Start committing adultery, and I'm talking about turn to it and stick with it, because it talks about, the scriptures talk about, a stumbling block, right? It talks about, and it's also different between someone who, that's why the Most High said he measures hearts, because a lot of times it really boils down to intent. Right. If somebody steps on your shoe, and I'd be like, hey, man, my bad, I'm so sorry about that. It's a little different than if I see you got some nice shoes on. I'm like, man, F them shoes and I step on them, right? Because it's about the intent. Right. That's a very different kind of approach to the same offense. So this is someone that they're committed to this. It's not just a one-time slip up and it's like, man, you messed up. You trying to work your way back in, because you do see a lot of righteous men who they were perfect, but they may have made mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. Who was it? Abraham with Sarah. He lied and said that was his sister.
All right, that's right.
Technically speaking, was that not a sin? But that does not mean that he was not still a righteous man. He was eager and zealous after the laws of the Most High, but he kind of had a slip up. That's very different from what, say, King Saul was doing, right? How he just time after time after time after time, he was rebellious, stubborn, and turned heavier and heavier into wickedness. Yeah. Those are two very different things. But it says once they do go into that, their righteousness won't be remembered. But because you saw that stumbling block, you saw them turning from their righteousness, and you chose not to warn them, that's going to be on you. That's your responsibility. It's as if you killed that person in the eyes of the Most High. Verse 21.
Verse 21. Nevertheless, if thou warn the righteous man, the righteousness sin not, and he doth not sin, he shall surely live, because he is warned. Also, thou hast delivered thy soul.
So it says, if you warn him and he decides not to sin, it says, okay, he gonna live. Then you was able to change, you was able to say, you literally saved that man's life or saved that woman's life.
Praises.
Hey, you doing it, man, I'm telling you, you don't want to do this. And they'd be like, man, you right. Said, man, you saved their life and you delivered your soul. You did a good work. Let's go over to 1 Samuel, right? Let's get an example of that in the scriptures, of how serious it is, regardless of that title, that whatever, to warn. 1 Samuel chapter 3. We're going to read from verse 1 down to 5, and then we're going to drop down from there.
1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 1. And the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli. And the word of the Lord was precious in those days. There was no open vision. And it came to pass at the time when Eli was laid down in his place, and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see.
So he's getting older. He's going blind. Go ahead.
And ere the lamp of God went out of the temple of the Lord, where the ark of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep, that the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, "Here I am. Here am I." Verse 5, and he ran unto Eli and said, "Here am I, for thou callest me."
So Eli was Samuel. This is, mind you, this is Samuel the prophet, but this is him as a child. So Eli was his father. And as they're in the house, the Most High is speaking to Samuel, being a child, mind you, right? That's why the scriptures talk about the Most High is looking at the hearts. He knows us before we even fashioned in the womb. So he's looking at Samuel as a child, and he's like, look, I know what kind of heart he has. I know what kind of mind he has. Most High is choosing to deal with that man. Like, I see him. So the Most High is calling out to Samuel. Samuel runs in the room to his dad. He's like, "What's up, Dad? You called me?" He's like, "Nah, I didn't call you." So he does this 2 more times. Then on the 3rd time, Eli, his father, tells him, "Okay, when the Most High, that's the Most High speaking to you. Right. When he speaks to you again, say, speak now," or speak. Pretty much tell the Most High that you hear him and that you're listening. Drop down to verse 10.
Verse 10. And the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel answered and spake, "For thy servant heareth."
So that's what his father instructed him to do. He said, okay, you know what? This is the Most High speaking to you. So when you hear him this time, say, "Speak, for thy servant heareth." And so now Samuel and the Most High is communing, right? Go ahead.
And the Lord said unto Samuel, "Behold, I will do a thing in Israel, at which both the ears of every one that heareth it shall tingle. In that day I will perform."
That was heavy, huh? He said everybody who hears it, their ears go tingle.
That was heavy.
Go ahead.
Verse 12. In that day I will perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house. When I begin, I will also make an end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever, for the iniquity which he knoweth.
He said, for the iniquity which he knows, right? I'm holding him accountable for something where he knew better. Go ahead.
Because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not.
Because he restrained them not. So mind you, Eli, this is Samuel the prophet's father, right? Right. Samuel was zealous of the Lord. Of course, that was the spirit that was put into him. But even Eli, actually, his father was a judge. So he was zealous about the law, at least at one point. But then when he had sons, his other two sons, who were also made judges, they weren't judging righteously. And Eli knew that. He was still in a position of some type of authority to where he could have said, you know what? He could have either went to his sons and said, look, y'all need to step down. You're not judging the people righteously. You're destroying everything that's been built. Or even he could have went before the people saying, look, I've been a righteous judge for all, however many years. Hear my words one more time. Don't listen to my sons because they're not doing right. They was sleeping with women in front of the temple. They was doing all kind of it said they made themselves vile. Like they was doing all kind of foul stuff. And it said, but the Most High said, because he didn't stop them, he didn't restrain them, that's why he was going to be judged. So because he wrested judgment, he wrestled with it, or he allowed it to stand, he allowed them to just continue over and over. They kept going into sin. They kept sinning. They kept pulling more people into the sin. Now it's more blood, being spread and more death that has to go forth, all because Eli was just allowing it to happen. He said, look, now that thing I told you, he said, it's about to come to pass because you didn't restrain them. Go ahead.
Verse 14. And therefore I have sworn unto the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifices, nor of offerings forever.
He said, man. He said, look, that iniquity is so bad, your whole house, sacrifices or offerings, they're never. Imagine that. Imagine 10 generations down the line. He said, that does not matter. The whole house purged was forever. That's not going to absolve from what he was doing, because you have to understand how he was in that position of power. He had that authority. He could have been able to make things, and then ultimately, by sitting idle in that position of power, you allow that wickedness to go forth. Now, like I said, think about how many more people are going to get judged. Thinking how many people got genuinely deceived. And you see that even today, right? You see a lot of wicked leaders, people who know better, whatever the case may be. They take advantage of those that are new in Israel, especially the women. They take advantage of those things, take them and kick them to the curb, don't want to take them as wives, aren't willing to hold themselves accountable. Hey, if you got you a dragon, that's what you got. That's what you roped in. Hey, you gotta held. It's got to be a level of accountability. If it sucks, it sucks. That's the cup that you choose to drink from. But regardless of how unfortunate the situation is, you're gonna have to learn some wisdom and learn how to navigate that situation. But ultimately, that accountability should stand. And of course, because ultimately, and that's the honorable thing though, because anybody could go make a mistake and then you get comfortable with leaving, right? That tends to be a pattern, a self-destructive pattern. Get to somewhere new, forge relationships, destroy those relationships. Oh, now I gotta go. And then it'd just be a path of and a trail of destruction behind you, because it's just those same self-destructive patterns over and over and over again. It's honorable to say, you know what? I made my bed, and my bed is made of nails. Right. But this is where I'm going to lay to the Most High if he sees fit to deliver me. Because that's the same thing that King David did. A lot of people want to talk about how David got mercy. Look what David went through. Woo. Sons taking his wives, sons trying to kill him, and he's still going out to war. David didn't drop his other responsibilities, saying, man, my household is just in so much chaos. I just can't be there for nobody else.
His king was trying to kill him.
His king.
His king, yeah.
All those things was happening, and he fulfilled his duties that he already had to Israel. Yeah. His quotes didn't switch up. His works didn't switch up. And he was going through hell. And through all of that, he kept writing psalms and apologizing to the Most High, saying he trusted in the Most High, singing and dancing before the Most High.
And kept serving the Most High after he had slipped up. He slipped up and kept going harder.
That's that accountability.
That's
that rough road that, you're going to have to walk if you decide to pick up that cup or make that bed. That's the path before you. And of course, until Most High, should he see fit to deliver you out of that situation. Go to Leviticus chapter 19. Leviticus chapter 19, and we're going to read from 15 on down to 18.
Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15.
Uh-huh.
Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment.
Uh-huh.
Thou shalt not respect the persons of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty.
So respect the person of the poor. When I read that, I always think about how, like Aladdin, right? He was a thief. He was a poor thief that was just stealing so he could be able to eat. And it was like, man, that's an unfortunate circumstance. But it's like, even that is still wickedness. Even that is still sin, regardless of the predicament. But ultimately, that shouldn't really be happening if we're keeping the commandments and living righteously, right?
That's right.
Because there was something called gleaning, where anyone who was starving, you were homeless, you didn't have anything, you can go to any one of your brother and sister in Israel's fields, anybody's fields in Israel, and take some of the outskirts of the of what was planted. Yeah, you could be able to take whatever it was that you was able to eat within one session, and you couldn't go with a basket and try to clean them out. Go into the vineyard and you leave with 50 pounds of grapes, profiting off of somebody else's hard work. Right. But it said whatever you need to be able to sustain yourself in that moment, you're able to take that. So the same thing applies now, whether it's, regardless of the situation, because the scriptures say he gave no man license to sin. No man. So when you really digest that, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yes.
Because the woman and 7 sons that was being compelled to eat pork, and they was having limbs cut off, being dismembered, burned alive. He said, look, I didn't give you license.
They still didn't eat that pork. They was like, I don't care. You can cut off my arm, cut off my ear, whatever you got to do. I ain't finna eat it.
Most High willing, if we ever fall into them positions, he gave us that kind of spirit.
That's right.
That was a level of faith and devotion. He was like, man, we suffering for our sins. You could take these things from me. I'm going to get them back in the kingdom. All praises. That's a very heavy thing, but regardless of the situation, he's like, look, he gave no man license to sin. That's why you're not supposed to respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, saying, man, I can't tell him that. What if that Jake, he tried to beat my, whoop my, you know what I'm saying? We get into a fight, he whoop my ass, you know what I'm saying? I didn't want to say it, but I had to say it.
Right.
Whatever the case may be, or that Jake, he just sitting there, known killer, just staring at you. I can't believe you telling me this. Like, hey. Because John the Baptist, didn't he give judgment and it cost him his life? But he went to the grave with that. They didn't, he said, look, you can't have this woman. This is adultery. Then the husband, the bride, the groom, he was like, look, he asked his bride, what do you want? She said, bring me John the Baptist's head. They had to give him that. Any last words?
Yeah.
He wasn't like, all right, hold on, wait a minute. He said, man, I said what I said.
Right.
The laws of the Most High stand true. Whatever you do
right.
to me, that's why the scriptures say don't fear what they can do to the body.
Yes.
Fear those things.
Fear the Most High, where he can destroy both body and soul. In hell.
Real talk. It says,
but in righteousness thou shalt judge thy neighbor.
In righteousness. So, of course, and there's a balance to all of these things, and I'm going to try to paint out some of this balance because I don't want it to be like, man, regardless of the situation, never make a mistake, never do it, because I make mistakes. I've made some big mistakes. I work on becoming better and growing from those things. So I'm not going to sit up here and say it's like you're just the worst person ever. Nah, but we do have to understand what judgment is because ultimately those things, the Most High's judgment is going to stand. So we do have to make sure that we're doing what we can to warn our brothers, to warn our sisters, to try to keep each other encouraged as well as away from sin. Keep each other encouraged in this walk and keep each other away from sin. We should be able to help each other and be a hedge and a stay with one another's burdens and issues so that we don't have our brothers and sisters fall back into the world and go back into wickedness. So all these things are just examples and scriptures exemplifying what that's talking about. Of course, the scriptures also talk about mercy. We'll get into that, but, the judgment still has to stand. Those things still have to be present. Those warnings still have to go forward. And ultimately, don't let it be a situation where it was like Eli, where he had sons that he just didn't want to warn or didn't want to restrain, and then that mess around and get you caught up. Continue on. Where we at? Verse 16?
Verse 16. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. Neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord.
Read.
Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him.
He said, man, don't hate your brother in your heart, but in any wise rebuke thy neighbor. Whatever it is, you know it's wrong, you see it's sin, man, tell them. And a rebuke is a strong correction. They say you can't hate your brother in your heart, because that's the thing. If you see somebody, you know they're about to make a bad decision that's not going to be helpful for them, how much of a friend are you if you're just going to let them make that decision? Because imagine, because some people, the crazy part about it is we talk about conflict a lot. Some people really can't see it. Yeah. Some people really don't see, like, damn, I was toxic. Yeah. Then once they get to the other side of all that correction, of all that being a fool, of all that, all those mistakes, they get to the other side and they look back like, God damn, I didn't even realize I was that bad or that broken. That's the reality, because we're talking about Israel, right? We all got traumatic childhoods, messed up backstories, at least the vast majority of us. I haven't really met too many people that come in and they just, like, I guess I don't want to say normal, but you know what I mean? I haven't met too many people in Israel without, like, a hell of a testimony. It'd be all kind of stuff we go through.
Yeah.
So he said, you're not supposed to hate your neighbor in your heart, but warn them, rebuke them. You got to tell them that they're going off, that they're doing wrong. And ultimately, they're going to make the decision as to whether or not they'll hear it. But you can sleep well at night knowing that you delivered your soul because you told them. And then, like I said, some people, even though they are so far down deep into a hole that it's going to take them a while to change their ways, a while to recognize the problems within themselves. It's going to take them a while to get to a place to where they're ready to even be held accountable. But there are going to be those that say, okay, man, today's the day that I start the process. Today's the day that I'm going to start changing my ways, and I'm going to start doing better, and I'm going to slow climb better than no climb. I'm going to start taking that on. And then they'll start growing and start building. And then they'd be like, oh, man, that brother really turned his, changed things around. He really got himself turned in the right direction. All praises. Then it's something to rejoice about. They say you look back on it and laugh. Hey, I used to be a fool. I used to, wow, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Whatever the conversations be, but it'd be like all praises that you changed and all praises that, you can see the progress.
Yes.
All praises.
Yes.
And then he said, when you correct or get corrected, go ahead.
Okay.
Verse 18.
Verse 18. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people.
Then the Most High was like, hold on, I also got to put this in.
Yeah.
Don't allow them to sin. Don't hate your brother in your heart by allowing them to sin. And then don't hold no grudge and don't try to avenge. Some people, sometimes, especially if somebody really getting on you, it feels like an attack. You be like, man, I swear that nigga, he hates me. I'm trying to tell you he hates me. And it's like, nah, man, they love you more than you realize. Because they trying to tell you about yourself so that you can really look in the mirror, say, realize where you're going off at, and really decide to get back right before the Most High has to do it.
That's right.
You like, man, that's really love. Even though it may feel like an attack, it may feel uncomfortable, it may feel, it may feel just crappy, to be honest. Like, but it'll help. So don't hold that and be walking around with a grudge every time you see your brother in Shalom. Huh?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Give him a little weak dap now.
Yeah.
You don't want to even be around him. Don't want to don't try to avenge and don't bear no grudge. Whether you're the person that that was correcting or being corrected. Don't bear no grudge.
Don't bear no grudges. It only hurts you when you bear a grudge. And I know brothers and sisters that bring up different situations where it's like, oh, well, he didn't correct this person or he didn't correct her. You got to let that go. Because how do you know? Like, you don't know if he really saw that, or even if he did see that, maybe he forgot to correct him or whatever it is.
Or
you need to be happy that you're being corrected.
Exactly. Or it could be just like the scriptures say, judge not before you heard, or, all the scriptures that we read earlier.
Yes.
Maybe that person that you think got away with something did get corrected. And they might get corrected worse than you did, because they got corrected in private when it wasn't no punches held.
Or like what you said, it might I mean, it might be that, or it might be a case being held against them, and it's going to be greater punishment than you can imagine, than just saying that, oh, just correct. Sometimes, a person knows what they're doing is wrong, and it's just like, it's getting worse and worse for them. So when you're told, okay, get right, look at that as a good thing. Really look at that as a good thing. And thank the Most High. The Most High is giving you opportunity to get right. So you don't be no reprobate. Because he treat reprobates where he don't even, all right, I'm done. I ain't want to tell them correction. You don't want to be that dumb kind of person. So you need to be happy you're being corrected. Don't worry about the next person and holding a grudge. And then, it turn into you trying to get back to some vengeance. Right, I'm going to get this person. I'm going to make him feel like this and that. Okay, now the devil's working with you.
Right, exactly. That's real talk. You should be glad. That was a good. Yeah. That's a good saying. You should be glad because the scriptures say, "Whom the Lord loves, He chastens."
He chastens. He can't.
You see somebody going through something all the time, and it's not to say that we should be looking for the hard times, but it's not to say that we shouldn't either. You know what I mean? There's a certain level of. You see somebody doing wrong, and next thing you know, it be all kind of tragedies that just start happening. Like, man, Most High dealing with you, something to rejoice in. And then if you somebody that's getting chastened, something to rejoice in. Because a lot of people, it seems like they're getting away because they're allowed to be fools. But then what's their latter end? What's the ultimate judgment? I'm gonna get that next.
Yeah, that's real important what you're saying. It's that's acceptable to the Most High when you're going through something like that, and it's just like, why am I going through all this? Why am I always getting checked? And you change it, you making those adjustments. That's acceptable with the Most High. You don't want to be the complainer. You don't want to be the ones. I mean, like you said, it's almost good to look for something to happen so you can prove yourself. You can become better. And you ain't going, you can hurry up and get to that point where, you're not getting corrected no more. Or you just, where you want to be. You in good eyesight with the Most High. The Most High look at you. Oh, that's the apple of my eye. You better not touch them.
Right.
What I'm saying? You want that love. You want that protection.
I want to get one. I might just. Okay. Actually, wow. Yeah, I'm just going to reference that. It speaks about in the scriptures in Psalms how he said, man, he was like, I pretty much thought that my righteousness, he was like, it kind of felt like I was doing it for nothing in a sense. And then he said, ultimately, I had to consider what the end of the wicked would be. It's going to be death and destruction. It may seem like they're getting away. It may seem like, why is everybody coming after me? Why is this? Why is that? What about that person? It's like, man, maybe and then they seem to be doing well. Maybe if they are getting corrected, but they're not going through anything afterwards. It's like, man, he said, you got to consider their latter end. Man, we are going to, let's try to run through these real quick.
Okay.
You're not going to get all of them, I can see. Just write down 1 Samuel chapter 25, 1 through 6, 10 and 11, talking about Nabal, right? Where, matter of fact, I do want to get one of the scriptures out of there. Let's go over to 1 Samuel. So Nabal was called churlish. He was called wicked. Churlish, if you look it up, because I always was like, man, what made Nabal such a fool? Churlish means to be difficult to deal with, problematic. You know how somebody, like, whatever they're involved in, they just become a problem. Everybody might be at peace. It might be 50 different people in a room. They're all able to be at peace. Then that one person come along and just stir up the spirit to where everybody's at strife and everybody's debating within themselves and all kind of stuff. Said, man, Nabal was just difficult to deal with. And then he was also selfish, right? Because David, after putting him and his men's life at risk, protecting Nabal's flock and his servants, he asked then in turn, hey, we've been out here for a couple of days protecting y'all. Do you mind sparing some of what you have? Because he was a very wealthy man. It wouldn't have meant anything to him to give a sheep, a lamb, an ox, some wine, a bread. You know what I'm saying? There wouldn't really been no skin off his back if he give a little something. And he was like, hell no, who's David? Who are you? It's like, man, so after all of that, and then on top of that, it seems Nabal was a drunkard. Let's start 1 Samuel chapter 25 and verse 37.
1 Samuel 25 and verse 37. But it came to pass in the morning when the wine was gone out of Nabal.
So he was turning up the night before. He was, got drunk, and then his wife just pretty much let him have the night. And in the morning, he realized, like, uh-oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone.
So he was shook hearing the news that King David was about to come and kill him, and that she literally went out and, like, she single-handedly stopped him from doing that by offering him the gifts and being humble, just, giving him that, right?
Yeah.
And then it says, read verse 38.
Verse 38, and it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal.
That who?
The Lord smote Nabal, that he died.
So the Most High put him to death. And that's one of the things that this is important to understand, because Nabal was wicked, right? You see, he's difficult to deal with. He got a good woman. It don't really say how he was treating her. Don't really say but it did call him churlish, which surely, even as humble as she was, she probably found difficulty trying to deal with him, because he was just like, man, he's hard to deal with. He's wicked. She's called him a son of Baal. So it says the Most High put him to death. So, and one thing I want to say as far as that balance, because sometimes Jakes can take that and they can go too far with it, or just think that every single thing, like, man, that's judgment. Like, you be teaching on the street, trying to tell the people to come in. Got a brother that's semi-interested in listening. He nodding with the lesson. He give you the little fist. Right. He ain't an enemy, so why? The scriptures say don't make them an enemy if they're not one, right?
Right.
Brother see the camera, he trying to walk around and slip off the curb. Don't even get hurt or nothing. Just slip off the curb and stumble a little bit. Oh, you see that? That's judgment. That's the Most High. And it'd be like, bro, he was listening, man.
Right.
Now you chasing him off, and you're going to, reject his spirit or cause him to reject you, because he don't have no understanding. He's not understanding the scriptures. He's new to it. That may not, that might be just I might say it might be just a slip, because it wasn't like he was gravely injured. Now, if the brother would have slipped off a 4-inch curb and broke his ankle, I would have been like, whoa, I think the Most High was doing, because the scriptures say the Most High is the one who heals and makes alive. He wounds and he heals. So it's like, okay, man, but if the brother just literally missed his footing, no harm, no foul, no nothing, it's like, man, that may not be what that was. Like, there were a few, what was it? 2 men in the scriptures that did not see death, which was Enoch and Elijah. Yeah. Only 2 of them. Everybody else died. So you saying every person that's ever died got put to death as if they were wicked? What about Yahushua? Because he died, and he didn't just die of natural causes. Right. He was killed by his people. Right. It got to be a balance to that whole the Lord put him to death thing. This is an example of the Lord putting him to death. And look at how wicked he was and how ridiculous he was. Let's go over to 1 Samuel chapter 2. First Samuel chapter 2 and verse 6.
1 Samuel 2 and 6. The Lord killeth and maketh alive. He bringeth down to the grave and bringeth up.
So the Most High is the one that kills and makes alive. He's the one that's doing all these things. You get injured, go over to Sirach chapter 5. You get injured, someone dies, whatever the case may be, or is put to death. It said the Most High is the one who's doing all those things. Sirach 5 and 4.
The book of Sirach, chapter 5 and verse 4. Say not, I have sinned, and what harm hath happened unto me? For the Lord is long-suffering. He will in no wise let thee go.
Sirach chapter 7 and verse 8. So it said the Most High, and get that scripture a lot, because the Most High said, look, just because it's not right now, he will in no wise. Judgment is coming. One way or another, it's coming. You can't, he said he's patient. He might let you live for a little while, think everything's all good, and then start hitting you with things. Man, start having things just fall apart.
But as for repentance, you better repent hard. Repent hard. That's probably your only hope of escape. If you sin, don't think the Most High just gonna let that go. He's gonna forget about it. Repent and really get right with that.
Sirach chapter 7 and verse 8.
Sirach 7 and 8. Bind not one sin upon another. For in one thou shalt not be unpunished.
He said in one. Even if you feel like it wasn't that big of a deal, you getting ready for a job interview, you like, man, it wouldn't hurt if I shaved my beard just this one time. it won't hurt if I do this just this one time or, just something minor. He said, look, in every sin, you will not go unpunished. Because even, like, when you consider, taking into consideration how we're born into captivity, we don't know our past lives to sit up here and say what we're doing. But we might be paying for those things. Say he's patient. I'm going to send your spirit back.
Yep.
Hey, you remember that stuff? You may not remember, but I do. Most High still get you.
Yeah, that's why you guys, man, whatever life you living and wherever you're going through, I mean, don't be so hard on yourself. Just try to do as best as you can to get right. You don't know what sin you're working off in your past life. You don't know what you're working off or your forefathers did or your dad, your great-grandfather did. Just do right so you don't have to do it no more. Because this is it. This is our last captivity. We're going to be up out of here. So if you don't get right now, it can be real bad for you. No matter, I know you did righteous. You probably did 10, 20, 30 years in the truth, whatever it is, 40. It don't matter. It don't matter. It's the Most High said, and in one you shall not, he ain't going to let you go in one sin. So you got to make sure you get everything right. Everything right.
Read that verse 9.
Verse 9, say not, God will look upon the multitude of my obligations.
Oblations.
Oblations. And when I offer to the Most High God, he will accept it.
So don't say, just be like, man, I'm doing a whole lot. Of course he's accepting it, because it's like, Most High,
that's a good scripture.
You don't even know whether or not he's accepting those things. That's kind of like, that's something to be concerned about. Like, that's something you might want to put in your prayer. Like, please don't accept these things. Please be accepting of this. Because you see how Cain was a sinful man. He wasn't reproved. He offered an offering unto the Most High. It was not accepted. He was at least trying to keep the commandments, or at least from what we see in the story. We don't know his earnesty. We don't know his zealousness. And we don't know, the things that weren't written in the scriptures that he was probably doing and sneaking off or whatever the case may be. But you do see that when it was time to make that presentation, when he did decide that he was going to do something along the lines of what he was supposed to do to offer to the Most High was like, I don't want that. He had respect to Abel's offering, didn't care about Cain's.
See, and I was just saying, like, that's another point to just be that much more serious, because I know a lot of people, they just do it because they see, man, other great men, they want to be seen of what they're doing that's righteous. Like, here come my brother. Oh, let me go ahead and put that down. Let me start keeping the Sabbath. Like, no, man.
Do something while everybody's watching.
Right. Like, no. See, don't just do it because you have to do it. Do it because you want to do it. Do it because you want to please the Most High. Don't be like Cain. Cain, he's, okay, I got to do an offering. Oh, I got to go do an offering or sacrifice.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Abel, he wanted to do it. He like, oh, yeah. And then he's doing it with a good heart, happy, you know what I'm saying? You want to be that person. You don't want to just be doing it because, you have to do it. Don't do it. Don't.
Let me get Sirach 19 and 21. This is something. 19 and 21.
Yes.
This is something that, honestly, it's kind of mind-blowing. I'm going to just let the scriptures speak for themselves. Go ahead.
Sirach 19 and verse 21. If a servant say to his master, I will not do as it pleaseth thee, though afterward he do it, he angrieth him that nourished him.
Let's go to Matthew chapter 7. Let's go back to Matthew 7. So it says, if a servant is telling their master, I'm not going to do this, but then they be like, all right, let me go ahead and do it. It's all you don't do is make them angry. Because that's just like, you ever had somebody that you ask them to do something, they act like it's a big old problem, they refuse and make a big fuss about it, then they turn around and be like, because then it's like, oh, now you want to act right. You know what? But whereas if you would have done it when it was asked of you, it's respectable and honorable. But then if you got to, refuse and then you turn around, it's like, man, it's just not the same.
It ain't the same. They may... a lot of times they be thinking it because they didn't remember it. Oh, yeah, he going to do this or that for me Thursday or whatever. Let me go ahead and do this. He's like, you know what? Don't do it for me at all. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Exactly.
Matthew 7 and verse...
let's go down to verse 3.
Matthew 7 and verse 3. And while... beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considereth not the beam that is in thine eye? Or wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye?
So he pretty much saying, he said, judge not lest you be judged. Whatever it is that you judge people by is what they're going to judge you by. And then he says, look, don't be trying to also call out somebody. You got this huge, big old issue that you dealing with, sitting up here talking about, you got a beam in your eye, but you talking about, hey, man, let me help you out. Like, nah, it says, thou hypocrite, cast out the beam out of your eye first. You can't be a hypocrite, and then also at the same time, you're going to be blinded by your own issues, your own BS, your own sins when it comes time to judge, because you haven't even removed that thing from yourself. You're not going to be able to clearly see and clearly judge because you're still guilty of those things. And maybe in the back of your mind, you're like, all right, but if I go light on him, or I got to go light on him when it's a serious offense because you got skeletons. Nah, don't do that. Let's get James chapter 2, verse 13. Write down Matthew 12, 35 through 37, talking about out of your heart, that's where your treasure is, and that's what comes forth. And we're going to be judged by every idle word. James 2 and 13.
The book of James, chapter 2 and verse 13. For he shall have judgment without mercy, that have showed no mercy.
It says, he shall have judgment without mercy that has showed no mercy. So if you never gave that mercy, and that's why I said I wanted there to be a certain level of balance to all of this, because a lot of it can just be chop, 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 chop. Right. Judge. And it said, look, if you judge without mercy, you ain't going to get no mercy, because there really are times where people have slip-ups. We're Israel. We're trying to get back right. We're trying to learn the commandments. And we're in a really bad place. We're living in a world that teaches us to hate the Most High, to hate righteousness, to everybody's square, this nigga weird, he this, he that, all because you're choosing to be righteous. You get, isolated and alienated just because you're trying to do right. But it's, that's a difficult process. People go through things in their personal lives, in their childhood, and their, people come in with demons, keep it real, that they got to overcome. And they be like, man, don't have that approach like, nigga, who raised you and what's wrong with you and all that kind of stuff. Because then when you find out what you made of, well, who raised you? What made you do that? It's going to be that same thing. You gave no mercy, you're going to get no mercy. Write down Matthew 5 and 7, which is pretty much saying that same thing. And let's get John. We got 2 more scriptures. Ooh, this one might go a little bit over, but this one's important. John chapter 8, we're going to start at verse 1 through and read down to 11.
The book of John chapter 8 and verse, you said 1?
Let's drop down to verse 3.
John chapter 8 and verse 3. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act.
So they're like, look, she's guilty. We know she's guilty. We caught her in the act of adultery. Go ahead.
Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou?
And this is that whole don't examine before you heard the matter, right? The things that we started off with. Because this situation, it seems as though the obvious answer, kill her, right? They was like, look, we caught her in adultery in the very act. It don't get no more closed case than this, right? But look how Christ handles this, right? Read on.
Verse 6, this they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Yahushua stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them.
So first off, the first thing was he didn't even answer him because he already knew what they was trying to do. And they asked him for his opinion. What do you say? He was like, man, I already know what he didn't even speak at first. Then he was like, okay. They kept asking him. Then he answers, and he said, okay, what'd he say?
He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her.
So he said, look, whoever it is out of you that's like you perfect, say, okay, you be the one. Go ahead.
And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience.
By their own conscience, go ahead.
Went out one by one, beginning at the eldest even to the last. And Yahushua was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Yahushua had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Have no man condemned thee?
Go ahead.
She said, No man, Lord. And Yahushua said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more.
He gave her the opportunity of repentance. Now, I would always be like, well, she was caught in adultery. Why? And I believe in the other Matthew, Mark, and Luke, one of them, it actually says that she had 5 husbands, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, man, didn't she know? What was this? What was that? But it's like, you got to realize Israel was at a terrible state, being destroyed, right? They were already in captivity, just like we're in captivity. Right. Under the Romans, under Edomites, right? So we see in this kingdom how horrible that they can really be, all the stuff that they do, the lies, the deception, the teachings, the subliminals, all of that stuff. They was going through the same thing back then under Rome, right? Then, on top of that, those that were supposed to be helping Israel, being the Pharisees, the leaders, it said that they was making things worse. He was like, man, y'all not going into the kingdom and you shutting it up against men. Those that were leaders in Israel were making it that much more difficult to actually understand and to repent because even they weren't right. So taking all those things into consideration, judgment still went forth, right? But this was one of those times he said, okay, letting you off with a warning. I'm going to warn you. Now that you know, go and sin no more. The Most High sometimes brings us close to death to let us feel that fear and then gives us warning while we're in that humility. Because it said they gathered her. They was a crowd of people. You know what they was going to do. It wasn't like she was just taking a stroll. Oh, everybody in town decided to join me today. They grabbed her. They snatched her out the house. They bringing her. They like, man, we about to stone her. We taking her to the outside of town. We going to stone her to death. You know she was terrified. Then they put her fate in the Christ's hands. He said, all right, well, whoever it is, y'all can stone her. Then she had to slowly see, because it said the eldest first. She had to see people slowly disappearing around her. Think about how terrifying and how spiritual of an experience that must have been in that moment to be in that position. And then he said, while she was at that place, he said, all right, go and sin no more. Oh, thank you, Lord. Okay, absolutely. Yeah. I got another chance. I'm all right. I'm doing right. I'm not going astray this time. Thank you for that mercy. The water Yahweh, Shai. Thank you. Let me get Sirach 18 and 20.
The book of Sirach.
I need this one real quick. Go ahead.
Chapter 18 and verse 20. Before judgment, examine thyself. And in the day of visitations, thou shalt find mercy.
Examine yourself. Make sure that you're not being a hypocrite. Make sure that you're getting things out of your system. Make sure you ain't got no guile walking in. And, man, I've been waiting for him to slip up and come. I've been waiting for this case to hit my desk. I can't wait to send it, to put this man to death. Examine yourself across the board, right? Go ahead.
Verse 21. Humble thyself before thou be sick. And in the time of sins, show repentance.
It said, humble yourself before you be sick. Last scripture, Revelation chapter 20 and verse 12. Humble yourself before you be sick. So take it upon yourself to hold yourself accountable, to hear the correction that's coming to you. Surround yourself with righteous people that's going to hold you accountable. Listen to that correction and deliver your soul. Because this is the ultimate judgment. Go ahead.
Revelation chapter 20 and verse 12. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were open, and another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works.
So we're all going to be judged according to our works. All the things that we said, all the things that we did, whether we worked really hard to be righteous, whether we worked really hard to conquer ourselves and to become prisoners of Christ, or whether, you gave yourself over to every fleshly lust and every desire that you had. You found your life here, but you'll lose your life. Or you lost your life here and you'll find your life. Read.
Okay. Verse 13. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and the death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works.
So, and go ahead, read verse 15.
And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire.
So this is going to be the ultimate judgment. When we're talking about judgment, that's ultimately what we're all trying to avoid. We're, as brothers and sisters, as members of the flock, as servants of Yahushua and servants of the Most High, we're all trying to help one another and help ourselves to avoid that judgment of the lake of fire. So with that being said, we kind of at the time.
Yeah.
I hope this was edifying, Israel. I hope it gives us a better idea and standpoint of what judgment is, bringing in the balance as well with that mercy, that understanding, that example that was set forth by Christ. And with that, we say shalom.
Shalom.
It's Mitch on the